Hello, it's me again. Hi. Okay, now from Warner Brothers Pictures and Legendary Pictures, we have the epic Dune Part 2. Following up from the first installment of the massive sci-fi hit, Dune Part 2 follows Timothée Chalamet's character, Paul Atreides, as he teams up with Zendaya's character, Chani, and the Fremen, while he seeks revenge against those who destroyed his family. Here today to talk about the film, please welcome co-writer, director, and producer, Denis Villeneuve. Please come in. Here he is. And producer, Mary Parents. And producer, Tanya Lapointe.
Thank you.
All right, so Denis, we're going to show a clip, but would you mind setting it up for us a little bit, explain what we're about to see?
Well, good morning, everybody. Thank you for being here. We're about to see a clip which is at the climax of the movie where Paul Atreides just defeat his nemesis, his opponent, his rival, Fedrota, in a knife fight. And he's like, it's the, how can I say that, the outburst, the beginning of the tragedy where Paul will say farewell to the love of his life in order to get power. Voilà.
Thank you. Okay, roll the clip.
You should have believed. You chose the wrong side.
Side? You of all people should know. There are no sides, Reverend Mother.
The life debt has been paid. Spare my father now, and I will be your willing bride. The throne will be yours.
Wow. So, of course, that's an incredible moment. It's the kind of climax, like you said, of so many threads coming together. But at the heart of this story, it's a love story. Tell us about kind of using the relationship at the heart of this to find the kind of, I guess, crux of how you were going to approach the adaptation.
Yeah, technically, it's that was the structure that we applied to the screenplay, which is that we will see Paul's journey through through this love story, the birth of this love story, the struggle of this love story, and then the separation at the end. That we will follow Paul becoming a man and struggling with power and having to make very difficult decisions. And I kept saying to the crew that our most important thing as we were shooting, the crucial thing that I kept saying, that if we believe in their love story, we will have a movie. And that was the essence of the film, and the whole structure of the film was built upon that relationship between Paul Atreides, played by Timothée Chalamet, and the character of Shani, played by Zendaya. And it's very important because at the end, in the third act, it was important for me that to create a distance with Paul Atreides, so we could have a critical distance and see being witness of how he changed for the worst, and through Shani's eyes, and that is something that is slightly, not slightly, very different from the book, and that I wanted to make sure that it's in order to be faithful to Frank Herbert desires about how this novel could be real. It's a cautionary tale. It's not a celebration of a hero figure. It's a cautionary tale about messianic figures.
Yeah, we see that when in Shani's disappointment, it's not just because the love of her life has walked away, it's because of his political decision making. So this whole thing is a kind of cautionary tale about how power can go to your head and kind of destroy things.
It's a tragedy because Paul doesn't really have the choice at that point, that in order to save his friends, he has to embrace a side and start a war that will, if ever there's a third movie, well,
we will definitely be asking about that.
but it's that's where lies the tragedy. And of course, during the whole movie, Shani, which is more like as usually women are more mature at the beginning. Paul has been raised in feathers, and Shani's in the desert, and she's more mature, and she brings him toward adulthood, and and by doing so, she trusts him because Paul wants to be with them, with the Fremen, to embrace her culture, to respect her culture, and he promised her that he will not become himself to take power in his name, and which he does at the end in order to try to save the planet. I don't know, guys. Sorry, I'm a bit rusty. I don't know if my English makes sense this morning.
Yes, perfect sense. Mary, for Legendary Pictures, this is a epic undertaking. Do you feel that there was a big difference between part 2 for you in terms of approaching this as a producer and the scale and scope of it? Because I know that Denis likes to do a lot of practical filmmaking. No detriment to the VFX team, who obviously won an Oscar for part 1. But tell us about the differences in taking this on part 2.
Sure. I mean, I think in the first film, Denis did an incredible job of laying the foundation, establishing the characters, and then part 2 was very much about going deeper. Everything Denis does is so intentional, so layered, from the characters to the world. He was very clear when we first started talking about this film that he wanted to be boots on the ground, tactile, nature, the real world. That's so much a part of, it's, a character in the film, particularly for the Fremen. And so it's an incredible adventure, supporting his vision. And being in the desert is something I'll never forget. In a good way, in an incredible way. And what he's able to capture and the way that the film really penetrates your soul, is very much about his vision and capturing that real world.
Could you also speak to just bringing this insane group of actors together? Because it is a phenomenal achievement. So tell us how that happened.
It's a lot easier when you have a filmmaker like Denis at the helm. You have a lot of incoming. It's actually quite easy. I'd love to say that, Tanya and I was like, oh, we really, got in there and made this happen, but that was not the case at all. People really, line up and raise their hands justifiably to work with Denis, and, to have characters like this with so much meat on the bone. There's really something for the actors to play, which is exciting.
Tanya, let's talk a little bit about the amazing craftspeople behind this film. I mean, it's just phenomenal what they've achieved, just production design, costume design. I mean, just the score by Hans Zimmer is insane. Can you speak a little bit about kind of helping support Denis' vision and staying true to the source material with all of those craftspeople?
I think it's one of my favorite parts of producing the Dune films. It is working with all of the teams because the way it works isn't the head of departments and each department working on their end and then showing up on the day with their props, costumes, and so on. It really requires everyone working together. And I think there are many examples of that. One of them is the warm writing. I remember it was one of the first methodology meetings we had. Denis came with how to sand warm ride, because in the book, in the original Frank Herbert book, it says, and Paul, rides the sandworm. It was a little bit more dramatic than that, but it didn't explain how he did it. And so Denis came up with how the technique, the technology, and therefore all the departments had to create those elements. And so I think one of the most memorable moments in prep, we were on this platform, which was to become the sandworm, and you had the art department with different types of textures of what the sandworm skin would look like. And then you had the special effects team that was saying, well, how much do you want the skin to billow when we pull back the skin? And then you had the stunts team that was obviously discussing the security of it all. And you had the props saying, how far away do you need to extend the hooks? And throughout all of this, Denis at the center of this, as though he's always done sandworm writing. And he's sitting there and he's like, it's not like this, it's like this. And everyone's like, okay. And from that moment on, all the actors and all the crew members had gone to the Denis Villeneuve sandworm writing school. But all this to say that that's one of the many examples of how everyone really had to tie in together in this vision and this very complex and intricate world building that Denis created, which is also based on a very dense book that we've come to love.
Denis, you've said before that you feel like, maybe we're in quite a conservative era of cinema in some ways. And I feel like you're something of an iconoclast, if that's the case, because you've pursued this film on an epic scale, but you make it very real and very personal and very human. So can you speak to whether you agree with, first of all, the iconoclastic statement, and how you feel like you just maybe tune out the expectations of others in order to achieve your vision?
Man, the thing, iconoclast, am I conservative too? I think. I don't know if I'm, but I'm quite classical. Say right from the start, when Mary and I talked about the adaptation of those two movies that will make that huge project Dune. It was clear for both of us that at the center of it will be the tragedy of a young man falling in love with that girl. We will have to focus on the intimacy, and that the story will need to be as intimate as possible in that kind of a genre, and that's for me what makes it interesting. I mean, like Tanya talks about the worm, all the visual effects or all the explosion, those are toys. It's fun. What is frightening is to direct an actor on a bad Tuesday morning. It's to make sure that the threads of this emotional journey will make sense, and the sauce will work. That's a bad analogy. Anyway, I try to protect the and focus on the intimacy of the relationship as I was doing this movie, despite the size. I don't know if I answered to your question correctly.
You did, in terms of making a film with heart and scope at the same time. Yes, and I think that's rare these days. I'll just say that. Yeah, which is what I meant by iconoclastic. I also really enjoy the representation of really powerful women in this story. Can you speak to how you address that? Maybe all of you could speak to the conversations you had about representing women that kind of held all the cards, essentially.
Quickly, I will say that from the start, Dune, as Tanya said, is a very dense book, and I took at the beginning the idea that we will focus on the Bene Gesserit sister, and that took removing a lot of the book, focusing on that branch of the book, that sisterhood that is so relevant and interesting. And I think it's in continuity with my past work, where since a long time I've been focusing a lot of my movies at female protagonists as heroes. And that's coming from where I come from.
I like that.
I thought you.
We can talk about how much you love strong women.
Yes, yes, please do.
They are the Bene Gesserit, those two.
It's evident, of course. So I'd love to hear from all of you, just to end this, what you hope that people will take from this. It's a story about love, it's a story about war, and it's a story in some ways about politics. What's something that you hope someone absorbs from seeing this story?
I would say for me, I try to be faithful to Frank Herbert's vision about the idea of a cautionary tale, about being careful with charismatic figures and the power we give to some people, and the danger of blending, most specifically the danger of blending religion and politics together.
Very well said, yeah.
Yeah, I think Frank Herbert was prescient when he wrote the book, and I think that for us as a species, as human beings, as we find our way through the world, as much as we advance, we're confronted with the same age-old, the things that, make us human that are good, but the things that are challenging for us as human beings. So the power and the world and our place in the world and how we treat the planet and how we treat our fellow human beings and war and all of these things, resource hoarding, everything that we face as human beings, that we continue to just, there is almost a theory of the dialectic as we go through. We advance, but yet we're confronted with these same things. And so, Herbert wrote these books in the 60s, and here we are today. And so much, at the heart of the film, including just young people navigating their way in this world that they've been handed. And that's something that I think Denis did a beautiful job through Paul and Chani. They're just two young people in love trying to find their way through this world, but yet what they've been handed and what they're faced with, tears them apart.
My answer will relate back to your previous question, which is how power is exerted. And I feel that the way that the Bene Gesserit are represented, power is not thought as something that you exert or calculate or strategize on the short term. It's calculated over decades and centuries. And I think that long-term thinking is it's an interesting perspective as it's confronted to different, the men in the stories and the different factions who are exerting it for power now. And I think that the women in this film, it was really important. We had so many conversations about this, about each woman having her own agency. And even though Lady Jessica belongs to the Bene Gesserit, but she has her own agenda. And I think that's something that we can all relate to, is that all the characters, whether women or men, all have an end goal. And we're all living in a world where we have to make our own decisions. So I think these characters are very relatable, and more specifically for me, the women in the film.
Well, I just want to thank all of you for being here to talk about Dune Part 2, and just congratulations. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.